Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our 8th session of Culture Dose, Art for Wellbeing, a collaboration between the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Black Dog Institute. Before we begin, we'd like to give an acknowledgement of country. So today, we acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Black Dog stands. We acknowledge the Gadigal and the Bidigal peoples of the Eora Nation and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to people who have participated in Culture Dose previously and extend an even warmer welcome to people who are experiencing our program for the first time. Just to give you a brief outline, Culture Dose Art for Wellbeing is a fortnightly program and an experience to take time out for yourself, to connect with feelings, thoughts, and your imagination. In each session, we focus on 3 artworks from the collection of the Art Gallery of New South Wales, works that belong to you, the people of New South Wales. And in this session, and all our sessions, we create time and space for you to look closely, observe, respond, and make personal connections. I'd like to also welcome my co-presenter, Professor Catherine Boydell.
Thanks, Danielle, and hello, everyone. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome and thank you for joining our 8th session of our fortnightly noon sessions of Culture Dose. So hoping that you're taking time out of your busy day to just engage with these beautiful artworks. As Danielle mentioned, I'm Catherine Boydell. I'm a professor of mental health at the Black Dog Institute. And my program of research focuses on using the arts in the research process to create or produce research data and to communicate or share research findings using visual, performative, and literary genres. So really thinking about ways that we can share our research that are more embodied, that move beyond the peer-reviewed publication, which is really important to us in terms of thinking about reach. So Culture Dose itself is actually based on an Arts on Prescription program, which was a collaboration between Danielle and the Art Gallery of New South Wales and myself in Black Dog Institute. And our research exploring the impact of the Arts on Prescription program showed significant increases in mental health and well-being and in a sense of community inclusion and connectedness in the group that had been part of the 8-week session, engaging with different artworks on a weekly basis. And based on these positive findings, we decided to extend the arts engagement to the broader public. I'm going to be moderating the discussion this afternoon. So we just ask if you could ensure that your video and microphone are off during the session. You'll be invited to share your responses in the chat box, and you'll see that you have the option of responding only to the panelists, Danielle and I, or to all attendees if you want the entire group to view your comments. We also suggest that you might want to have a pencil, pen, or other materials present during the session in case you'd like to draw, doodle, and engage in any other creative activity during the session. And there also will be an opportunity following the session to use our email or our Facebook page to submit any artworks that you might like to. And to date, we've had some lovely submissions in terms of visual drawings, poetry, some photographs. So again, wonderful creativity that has emerged from attendance at these sessions. So to transition into the session itself, I'd just like to engage you in a very brief meditative exercise. So if you could begin by bringing your attention into your body. You can close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. You can notice your body seated wherever you're seated, feeling the weight of your body on the chair, on the floor. Take a few deep breaths. And as you take a deep breath, breathe in more oxygen, enlivening the body. And as you exhale, have a sense of relaxing more deeply. You can notice your feet on the floor. Notice the sensations of your feet touching the floor, the weight and pressure, vibration, heat. You can notice your legs against the chair, pressure, pulsing, heaviness, lightness. Notice your back against the chair. Bring your attention into your stomach area. If your stomach is tense or tight, let it soften. Take a breath. Notice your hands. Are your hands tense or tight? See if you can allow them to soften. Notice your arms. Feel any sensation in your arms. Let your shoulders be soft. Notice your neck and throat. Let them be soft. Relax. Soften your jaw. Let your face and facial muscles be soft. Then notice your entire body present. Take one more breath. Be aware of your whole body as best you can. Take a breath. And then, when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Our session for today will focus on the theme of the practice of sharing. So as we're all aware, sharing is a fundamental element of human interaction and responsible for strengthening social connections and supporting our well-being. Today we're going to explore how sharing can be the joint use of a space or a resource, but still more closely and more loosely, sharing can actually be the giving of abstract themes and concepts such as time and personal stories. The selection of works we've chosen for our session today invites us to observe, reflect on our senses, and most importantly, become aware of moments when we engage with others in our daily lives. So I hope you're feeling comfortable, and we'll focus on our first work for today. I'll give you a few moments to survey the painting, to look from left to right, to notice the figures in the foreground. As you observe in the painting, on the wall is a mirror. And the mirror is a device here to bring us into this cafe world. The mirror shows us the reflection, and perhaps we are in that mirror at this moment. Imagine being one of those people seated at the table. The mirror also shows us the scene outside, the view of the men in conversation, sharing discussion and stories. There's a lot happening in this painting. And what I'd like to do is take a few moments to focus on the group of people in the foreground. You'll notice the 4 women seated, quietly enjoying the moment. There's something very quiet and calming in the hustle and bustle of this cafe. In the foreground, we notice a young woman with a child, a toddler, a baby on her lap, who seems to be playing with her red fan. The joy of the other 3 women sharing that moment, enjoying watching the child exploring, observing the red scarlet colour, and we imagine the child moving the fan back and forth, perhaps opening and closing it. The woman who sits across the table holds a large, warm-toned fan. And she's engaging in a moment and sharing a moment with this child. Perhaps they're imitating each other. The 2 other ladies sitting on the bench seat, enjoying their coffee, are also sharing and enjoying this moment. Perhaps reflecting on their own youth or reflecting on moments that they've shared with their own children. I also want to reflect on the ritual of sharing a coffee or a tea that you may share on a daily occurrence, perhaps with family or friends, or perhaps going to a coffee shop and sharing it with a stranger that you don't know who's sitting across from you. A little bit like the gentleman reading the newspaper, who seems to be sharing the moment. He's there, but here at this moment engrossed in his newspaper. There's a warmth in this image. Not only the warmth created by the human interaction of the protagonists in the painting, but also in the colour scheme. The mahogany colours, the red tones, the scarlet red, the magenta, the tangerine tones, give a sense of warmth and invitingness. I want to invite you to explore the mirror. And the artist here has shared what these protagonists in the foreground can see. The hustle and bustle of this cafe. We see a waiter serving on the left. And in the foreground of the mirror, we see a man and woman in interaction, sharing a conversation, perhaps sharing a greeting. We also see a group of 4 huddled around their table, perhaps sharing a story or the intricate details of a recent event. The artist has cleverly also included the street scene beyond the cafe. And we notice the different types of interactions that we see through the mirror, the window. The men here are more casually dressed, and they're communicating not only verbally, but through their body language as well. This image is almost like a snapshot, like a photograph that captures a moment in time. I'd like to invite you to share perhaps where you imagine perhaps this painting is set.
We have someone asking, are they in Venice?
Yes, they are. There's a couple little clues that reveal our location. And one, just to share with everyone, is the newspaper. The newspaper is titled La Venezia. And if we look out of the window, we can see the canal and some of the famous buildings of Venice. I also want you to share with you that these characters being in Venice, these figures, are part of that world of cafe society where people mingle. There's those unexpected encounters with locals and travellers, as well as people who work in the local area. So I'm not sure if this image awakens memories for you of your travels, perhaps in the recent past, where you have these unusual encounters with people perhaps that you may have never met, but you have these wonderful discussions, and most importantly, sharing of personal stories of your adventures and your travels. Or it could be like these women around the table who perhaps share in this moment, even without words. They've had that moment of feeling connected with others. I'd like to invite you to perhaps imagine, and if you feel comfortable, to share what you think some of the discussions or the gossiping or the stories being shared could be happening in the different interactions in the painting.
We have a comment, admiration of the cute baby. I was also thinking something along the lines of talking about the toddler's progress, etc., in terms of what was going on. Yeah, again, we've got Yvonne saying perhaps talk about motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Focus tends to be on the young person in the group there.
There's a beautiful informality here in this composition. This is a painting that shows the prowess and the talent of the artist, but most importantly, the skill in observation. This is not a grand historical painting. This is a painting that captures everyday life, interactions and engagement in a relaxed way, similar to the way we might take an image on our iPhone or with a digital camera. It's a quick snapshot showing that hustle and bustle of atmosphere and energy.
We've got some lovely comments coming in, Danielle. At the back is the man asking the woman on a date. And then Verona says, it reminds me of what families do after Mass on Sunday, go to a cafe en masse. So the vibe is chilling for families and extended families, but also as everyone is dressed up in their Sunday best, it gives an opportunity for single people to meet. See mid-ground gentleman and woman. So again, we've got this sort of interaction coming in there. We have another comment. I can imagine the woman nudging the man reading the paper to look at the cute baby. We have another, the woman on the left in the foreground looks pregnant. Yeah. And Kaz says, I love how relaxed the lady on the left is with her feet up on the stool and slightly smiling. Plus the child looking at the lady on the left like she would like to aspire to be like that lady. I remember seeing lovely adults who I wanted to be like.
Well, they're beautiful comments. Mm-hmm. Really lovely comments. There's definitely so much interest and detail. I feel like the artist has really been an anthropologist here and really observed those subtleties in social interaction and body language. And as we know, often it's reported that 80% of communication is through body language. So when you look at, in particular, that lady sitting opposite the child, she's totally engrossed. Her body language is showing that she's, has her hand up to her face and she's really just engaging and just looking. I find this a fascinating painting as well. Being someone who loves coffee, I'm intrigued by those early exploration of coffee culture in the 19th century with the burgeoning espresso machines being rolled out across Italy.
So I also have a nice comment, Danielle, sorry, about the fans. I wonder at the symbolism of the fans, the shape is mimicked throughout the painting, even the boat with the fanning sails, which is a lovely observation. And then we have another comment. All the four women in the foreground have almost similar features, but just different hairdos. Are they all the same model? Is it painted all from his imagination or photo captured in the mind? Nothing to copy from.
Yeah. Well, we know the artist did travel to Venice and spent time observing, but you're exactly right. Those women do remarkably have the same features and probably we could deduce are the same model. So obviously he would have seen a scene similar to this, but working back in the studio would have perhaps relied on a life model or we may refer to as a muse to respond to and work from.
Another great comment, and it resonates with what I was thinking as well, from Kaz again. The man and woman on the left may not be with the three ladies on the right, but I like how they may happily be sharing the table. These days we have this thing with personal space, before the pandemic, I mean, we have lost the openness of welcoming strangers into our space. And then we have another comment. I have the impression that the woman holding the baby would be a nanny because she's wearing an apron.
That's a very good observation. There's all these subtleties that are communicated here, again, not just through body language, but through dress code. And again, we could spend the whole session on this painting. It's so rich and full of detail. But I do love that comment, Catherine, of connectiveness. We often in looking at art, see our own lives reflected, and we think of those experiences that we perhaps maybe had prior to the pandemic of social mingling and encountering each other. And as we progress in the next few months, we will develop new traditions and rituals around connecting, a little bit like our program today. I'm going to share with you the details here. So the painting is by the English artist Samuel Melton Fisher, the English artist, and it's actually beautifully called Festa, a Venetian cafe. And the word festa in Italian means a celebration or a festival, and often it's related or associated with a religious festival. So I think the person, Catherine, who shared that this looks like a family congregating after perhaps going to Mass, or we could imagine here going to Carnivale in Venice or going on an outdoor gondola ride, that this now is the experience of coming indoors and getting a little bit of respite.
It's interesting because we also had another comment from Verona saying, I think the foreground group is typical of a patriarchal extended family group on a Sunday when work stopped and observation of church was a ritual. So that's in line with what you're talking about. We also have another comment about the admiration for the fabric detail of the ladies' dresses and the intricate nature of the florals. And that was something I certainly noticed on the woman on the left. It's like, it's very detailed.
Mm. And I'll just draw your attention to the size of the painting. This is quite a substantially sized painting. It's 104.3 centimetres tall and 153.2 centimetres wide. It was painted in 1889, but really quite interestingly purchased by the Art Gallery of New South Wales in 1890. So it's quite an early work in the collection of the gallery. And to consider that this at the time was a piece of contemporary art, a cutting edge piece of contemporary art that looked at the modern world and was interested in capturing everyday life. It's not a grand narrative painting of classical stories. This is capturing light, atmosphere, and the burgeoning coffee culture that the everyday person today can definitely relate to. So an old painting, but definitely one that we can find personal connections and relate to.
Danielle, there's a question from Dominique asking whether it's currently on display.
Unfortunately, this work is not currently on display. The wonderful thing about the Culture Dose program is because it's online, what I really aim to do is perhaps sometimes to share works that are in our collection that the wider community might not be so familiar with. But we hope at some point it will come out, perhaps if we get a little support to sort of bring this work out. But I'm glad it's resonated with many of you today. Also, just in reflection of what Catherine was talking to us earlier, some of us might be sitting down today behind a desk. You may be on a sofa, but taking stock of your own body, how you're seated. Are you a little bit like the lady leaning on the table? Or are you sitting back like the lady with the fan? I'm imagining breathing in that Venetian air and hopefully enjoying my cup of coffee soon. And the reason why I really wanted you to engage with your body is because the next work will take us somewhere very different. I'll give you a few moments to explore the work. Maybe adjust your eyes to the tones that are here. I imagine that you'll be struck by the ochre tones, the yellows, oranges, and browns. I'd like you to take notice of the body language here. We have here a group of gentlemen, a group of men who seem to be living in very close quarters. If we look at this painting through the lens of sharing, these men are not only sharing very close quarters, they're sharing a meal together here, and they're sharing time. And I imagine here there's a great sense of familiarity. And I can also imagine the great stories that will be shared amongst these men. The artist here has created a scene through that close observation. It's almost as if we're sitting within this cramped space. I'll draw your attention to the curve in the space. On the right side, you see the three men sitting on the bench. And to the right of them, you see the curved wall. And going up that vertical, you'll notice a circular window that's open, allowing air in and a shaft of light. On the left, you'll see two men sitting on boxes, on wooden boxes, leaning in to eat and drink. So the space is narrow and cramped. And we see a gentleman in a bunk bed. There's not enough space for him to sit at the table. Where do you imagine this scene is?
We have a couple of comments, Danielle. One is from Catherine. Wow, I'm on board a ship in cramped quarters. And then Sandra's asking, are they in a boat?
Mm-hmm. Yes, they're in a boat. And these are the quarters of these sailors. They could be fishermen. They could be travelers.
Diane is saying, I notice all the men are absorbed in their food, drink, looking down, not looking at each other, yet very comfortable in the ship together, hungry. And we've got a comment, I can imagine a constant backache. And then Matt is saying, below deck at breakfast time, ready for a big day of fishing.
Definitely. The beautiful comments. Yes, you do get a sense that these men are very familiar with each other, sharing these quarters, I imagine, would really test each one of them. But being on a boat and working, it's all about cooperation and working together. And the connectiveness of these men is paramount to the success of the voyage. Or
we have a comment. I think there's trust between these men. So speaking to that, yes.
Yes, definitely. With the limited resources that have to be shared here, there seems, I mean, I agree. I feel these men probably would have great adventures, and I can imagine there would be great yarns that were spoken, but also at times the silence of being comfortable with each other. This is a sort of painting that shares with us an experience that the artist is helping us to understand. I'm not sure how many people have had an experience of spending long periods on a boat, but we get a sense that the artist understands. And those intricate details, such as having the porthole open and featuring the wooden box with the writing, just those little details show us that the artist must have lived this experience as well.
We have a couple more comments. That the painter chose to capture the moment when they were solely focused on the meals, not a conversation, is quite interesting, says Sandra. Brenda says, it reminds me of behavior in a crowded train, trying to respect others' space by looking down or away or closing eyes, trying not to be invasive. And Lynn comments, it's an old ship, all wooden. I wonder how long they've been aboard. A couple have beards, and I wonder where they're going and where on the sea they are.
They're wonderful open-ended questions, the curiosity that's stimulated. Yes, I can imagine this is a very long voyage. I'm going to share with you the medium and the title. So this is a watercolour by the artist Harry Hopwood. And I don't know if the fact that it's watercolour surprises anyone, but being watercolour and the amount of detail shows this, not only the skill of the artist, but also that desire to really give us a snapshot. Those warm wooden tones, the earthly tones, perhaps also suggest the character of these men. No nonsense, practical, earthy. But also there's a warmth there, the warmth of that light, which is really calming. The size of the painting is 45 centimetres high and 64 centimetres long or wide. And again, the Art Gallery of New South Wales purchased the work in the year that it was painted, in 1890. 1889. Can't read numbers today. So again, the gallery was collecting contemporary works that really highlight personal connections.
We have a question, Danielle. Have you selected this piece because it's about travel and we are more restricted now? I am reminiscing.
Well, we can always be armchair travellers through artworks. That was partly why I selected it. I mainly selected the work because of the engagement. The fact that we often have shared experiences with friends and family through sharing meals. Even if we're quiet and we're absorbed in our consumption, our consuming of food, it's that shared experience. When something's delicious, hopefully we have the same experience, and it's a shared experience of those small moments of joy, which I can imagine eating on a cold boat, being tossed around, would have been very much an experience that these men have shared many, many times before.
We have a couple of other comments. One, that both paintings were probably purchased on a trip overseas to bring back to Oz by sailing ship. And another one, a faux castle is a deck of a sailing ship, isn't it?
It is. It is the deck, not for officers, but for the standard sailor. Definitely. So we've got some mariners among us today, which is wonderful. I'm glad you've enjoyed that work. The next work we're going to move to will have, again, a very different tone. So you may need a couple of moments just to focus or adjust your eyes to the brilliant and opulent use of colour here. So here we have a unique piece that celebrates sharing time of leisure together, perhaps quite a modern concept of leisure. And again, because we're taking note of our breath and our body language, I'd like to focus on the woman in the hammock. She's lying back in a very confident way. She's comfortable in herself, in her body. And it's the archaic idea of lazing on a hot summer's day. Even to the extent of, I can imagine she's gone for a walk and picked a flower and placed it in her hair. Stretched out on the grass, again feeling very at ease and comfortable, is a young woman with her striking bob haircut. She's spending time relaxing and looking through magazines. The pair are by the sea. In the distance, we see the horizon line and the brilliant blue water. I get a sense of the calm quietness, the fact that you can share time with someone you know very well And sometimes you don't need to speak at all. I particularly love the dog here. Gazing up. We imagine perhaps it's the owner. Again, here it's a close-up focused on these two characters or two figures. So different to the previous image of the men in the cramped quarters. Here we're outdoors in the sun and fresh air. We have space to move our body. And so I hope this conjures up memories of summer holidays, perhaps childhood memories of just lounging around, reading, telling stories. And perhaps the youthful expectation of waiting for something to happen.
We have a comment, Danielle. Catherine's noted the healthy rosy cheeks on the humans.
Yes, very different to our men below deck. Definitely very healthy. When we look at this work as well, there are very strong, bold outlines. The work has a very strong design sense. So it gives a different sort of feeling. It's strong and it's bold and definitely very modern. I wonder if people were going to, if you were going to create an artwork that represents that intimate sharing of time with someone you know very well, how would you represent that image? Would it be indoors or outdoors? Would it be in a garden, walking?
We have some comments about the beautiful use of color. Yvonne is saying, I am thinking of the scent of warm summer breezes. And Catherine, for a feature tile or stained glass panel.
Yes, it does. It is quite reminiscent of a stained glass window, isn't it? With those very bold LED light cuttings. If you were entrusted to title this work, what would you call it? Or title it?
Just before some titles come in, we have a comment from Kaz. I'm sad to say that it has been so long that I have felt this relaxed, so it wouldn't be something like this, so carefree.
Mm.
Maybe Lazy Days would be a good title. We have a suggestion, siesta, afternoon siesta.
It's very appropriate. I can see the lady on the hammock with those rosy cheeks has perhaps enjoyed a scrumptious lunch.
Summer Sunday afternoon. A day off.
That's a lovely one. I like that one.
Mm-hmm. A lark in the park. The pink shoes.
Lovely titles.
Leisure by the water. Dog days.
Yes, I'm very impressed with the obedience of the dog there, just waiting for its owner to open her eyes. The first painting we looked at was in oil paint, and so it allowed the artist to model and manipulate the tones. The second work was a watercolor, but this is neither. It's not a watercolor and it's not an oil painting. So as you observe the lines and the way it has been coloured, I want you to imagine perhaps how this artwork was created.
A print. Pastels. Wood block print.
So I'll reveal the artist and the materials. So it's a woodcut print by the Australian artist Thea Proctor. And what is really unique about this work as well, not only is it a woodblock print, but it's also hand coloured. It's actually quite a small work, 17.5 by 22.8 centimetres. And that's the size of the framed piece of wood, the wood block that she would have carved from. So it's a very small work, probably about this size, but extremely bold and punchy, full of colour, joy, and confidence. Many people will know that Thea Proctor was a leading Australian modernist artist. And these sorts of woodblock prints that she created were quite popular in being reproduced in magazines at the time. I hope this work has brought a sense of joy and vibrance to your day to day. I'm going to go to our comparison slide and just have a look at the three works that we looked at today and find out whether there's one of these works that resonated with you most. Again, three very different types of artworks. Three scenes, three different mediums, and three unique expressions of human interaction, of sharing moments, of shared experiences.
We have a comment from Verona, 40 years between sings out.
I wonder if we had another 40 years, what the next image would be. Seems the first image has resonated quite strongly with many of you. Thank you for sharing that. And again, those personal connections may come in many different ways. And so I'm glad that we've been able to spend this time together exploring these works that sometimes are within the collection. We also, as part of the program, invite you to share a creative response around the theme of sharing today. So your response could take the form of a photograph of a social interaction that you've been part of, or you could actually think of that interaction and sketch it, create a collage, a watercolour perhaps, or even explore a piece of creative writing around the theme of sharing in our everyday lives. We'd be delighted if you were able to take some time out, perhaps after this session, and then share it with us by email at culturedose@blackdog.org.au. The Art Gallery is putting together a page that will have all these images collated so you can revisit this experience and, most importantly, share these images with friends and family and lead that discussion. So on behalf of the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Black Dog Institute, we trust that you've had an experience today that most importantly has allowed you to be present, to consider the impact of sharing, and to experience feelings of connectedness, curiosity, and most importantly, engagement. Shortly, a survey will pop up in your browser. And we really do hope that you take a few moments to share your experience today and the impact that these artworks have had on you. And we look forward to welcoming you to our next session in a fortnight that will be themed around the word belonging. So on behalf of myself, I'd like to wish you a wonderful day